Good evening. Our team, Group 4, consisted of myself, Colin Titus, Tara Tomasic, Bridget Todd, Sarah Walker, and Steven Subritsky. Even though we didn't have the opportunity to architect the team based on our individual strengths and preferences, the team members really embraced their individual roles for the sake of the team. We were able to communicate effectively and completed 80% of the climb together as a group. The team members will now provide some insight on their individual roles and how they approach the challenge, starting off with Tara.
My role in the simulation was the physician, and I learned immediately that I was critical to keep our group safe and healthy throughout the duration of our climb. I was the only one able to administer supplies like medication and water to others in the group, but also learned that I could only give out one supply to one person per round, which meant that I needed to be more strategic and deliberate about my choices. By planning ahead and recognizing the needs of the group, the physician role offered key process gains that fostered teamwork. I was able to recognize when Bridget was having symptoms of an asthma attack and got her the inhaler in time so that she could continue on with her climb. Similarly, I recognized when Stephen was having some symptoms of altitude sickness, and I got him medication in order to alleviate those symptoms. I also started to administer water as we advanced in our climb to members of our group, hoping that it would help with their mental acuity or just their overall wellness. And in making these decisions, there was some uncertainty because we weren't sure if there would be negative consequences or waste created if we gave out the supplies too early. But we all agreed that the safest bet was to be proactive, and I believe that by being proactive, we were able to save members of our group. But in thinking about others in the group, that might have actually also contributed to my downfall, as I was the only one who needed to be rescued and returned to the base camp. By not paying as much attention to my own needs and failing to correctly calculate the amount of oxygen needed, we experienced a process loss because not everyone reached the summit and points were lost since one of us needed to be rescued. Now Bridget will discuss her role as the environmentalist.
Thanks, Tara. So as my role as the environmentalist, I did utilize open dialogue and compromise with the team to achieve most of my goals, including avoiding rescue, remaining at Camp 4 for an additional day, and on day 4, with the help of Tara, the physician, we were able to successfully complete the hidden challenge when I had an asthma attack. My overall experience working with the group was positive. I initially had some communication issues with the group messaging when my microphone would not work. Luckily, the group individual members quickly came together to develop a secondary communication method to engage with me through messaging chat, along with the group video chat. Additionally, I admit that I was initially flustered and was not openly sharing in group conversation because of the novelty or foreign nature of this simulation. Both mountain climbing and group messaging and video chat are not up my alley. This made me feel like an imposter and decreased my personal sharing and group contribution initially. Fortunately, once we got going and the group dynamics progressed and the culture increased, I did feel like I put the team's needs in front of my own. I shared all information openly, posed questions and suggestions, but I was open to team input. And now I'm going to pass it off to Steve.
Hi, my name is Steve Zabritsky, and for the simulation, I was in the marathoner role, where my primary personal goal was to advance all the way to the summit. And then the major impact I had on the group was correctly predicting the weather and how that would impact our ability to advance forward to the camps and ultimately the summit. Early on, the focus was on the success of the group moving forward while accounting for the weather. And the biggest challenge near the end was balancing my character's personal needs with the needs of the group. I needed extra oxygen to achieve my main goal of reaching the summit, but was only able to do that with someone else on the team giving that up. And now Sarah is going to talk about the photographer role.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I was a photographer for this simulation. My main goals were to avoid rescue, stay at Camp 1 for 2 consecutive days, and stay at Camp 2 for 2 consecutive days. My main challenge during this simulation was deciding whether to do my own personal goals versus go towards completing the goals of the team. So basically, the team and I both weighed out the personal points lost versus team points lost and tried to minimize how many points we would lose if we did individual goals versus team goals.
Thank you, team. So the approach to this week, as you can tell, that the team really valued communication, and they put the team's needs and the team's goals ahead of their own personal goals in many cases, which allowed us to get together to Camp 4 as a group. We scored 61% and the challenge, which I thought was respectable, given the different challenges that we had, and then the unknowns presented by the Everest challenge. My approach to this week's challenge as a leader for the group was to garner trust among the team members and to value and to instill open communication where every team member felt valued and they could, without reprise, talk about their individual conditions and what they wanted to do to complete the challenge. Something I definitely feel that I should have done differently as a leader was to pay closer attention to each individual team member to ensure that they were fine, even though the physician spent a lot of time talking to the team members, giving them what they needed. I felt that she neglected, and as a leader, that should have been my role to follow up to make sure that she was okay and could complete the challenge. So now I'll pass it on to Tara to answer some of the other questions.
Our group was effectively able to solve problems and make decisions even when members had different information and opposing interests. A key for our group was taking turns at the start of each round sharing out information that we saw on our own screen. We brought up details that might be unique to our role, shared out reporting on our health, and reflected on our climb speed and took inventory of items that we had, like food supply and medication for the physician. Even though we had individual goals that conflicted at times with the team goals, we were all very open and honest with our given information so we could make objective evaluations having the same set of information. Sometimes a specific climber had a monetary incentive even for accomplishing an individual goal, but we were all in agreement that in order to make it through the simulation with so many unknowns, we needed to be open and honest about our experiences. Our reading this week shared research from MIT about defining 5 patterns of communication. And while I feel that we did all of these very well, the ones that stood out to me are everyone on the team talking and listening in roughly equal measure, and connecting directly with one another rather than just the leader of the group. Performing the simulation while on a video call allowed us to be more attentive to each other and the overall needs of the group. Now Bridget will share some of her observations about the group's experience.
In line with Tara's discussion on connecting with one another, as the complexity of the simulation increased, such as in the oxygen challenge, our team was actually able to improve our decision-making through increased sharing. Similar to the marshmallow experiment, our team's success grew through increased exposure and experimentation. The team culture developed more trust as the simulation progressed, increasing the psychological safety of the environment and allowing all team members to freely share ideas, concerns, and ask questions. Each member was open and honest about our knowledge, and we're eager to learn from one another, accepting suggestions and feedback from the team. And now Steve is going to discuss how our team performed in situations characterized by time pressure and competition.
Thank you, Bridget. The team was successful in balancing time pressures and competing interests through open communication. Pressures based upon competition and time limits didn't really come into play until about day 4, when the amount of variables and needs to consider significantly increased both on the personal and group level. Specifically, at this point, we had to decide who was going to continue to the summit in order to appropriately divide up the cache of oxygen containers. At this point, we had to allow individuals to take the time they needed to calculate their character's oxygen needs, and this was where competition for resources was most prevalent. We worked together to balance the success of our personal goals with the success of the team goals as much as possible. To alleviate time pressures, we split the simulation into 2 days so as not to have to rush through the experience while being respectful of each other's time. We initially set up the 2 days that we were going to work on the simulation, as well as when we were going to record the video. And I think there was a benefit to having participated in the first 3 days of the simulation, taking a break, because this allowed us to build communication and collaboration norms both through the actual simulation as well as the project as a whole. And now I'm going to pass it over to Sarah.
Now I'll discuss how well our team and leader dealt with the potential trade-offs between the short-term task completion and the longer-term team effectiveness. As everyone has mentioned, the team really excelled at communicating information that was unique to each role. This included any of our individual goals as well as our background medical history of each team member. It seemed that some of the members had individual goals that would cause another team member to fail one of their goals. So, for example, I had to stay at Camp 1 and 2 for 2 consecutive days, versus someone else had to get everyone to the summit versus staying at Camp 4 for 2 days. When we hit a spot where someone could complete one of their goals, we really discussed the pros and cons to them completing that goal and if it interfered heavily with another person completing goals or the team's overall effectiveness. We really felt that sticking together would decrease the chances of someone needing rescued, and avoid rescue was one of the goals for each team member. This really helped us analyze whether this would hold back our team as a whole and need someone getting rescued. This worked out really well considering the paramedic was with us every step of the way to offer her supplies and water if needed. This week in our readings, Bernstein mentions that self-managed organizations make decisions closer to work, where communication becomes more efficient and accurate. I think that our team followed this really well as the days went on and the challenges became more difficult. Bernstein also stated that these groups also respond to emerging needs in the market. In this instance, our market was climbing Mount Everest, and this team did exceptionally well with this, considering all the discussions we had with needing medical supplies for the medical challenge and discussing how many oxygen canisters we would need, as I mentioned before. In conclusion, though our team score was only 61%, I believe that as a team we grew through the simulation. None of us really knew the other members' leadership styles or teamwork styles, but after getting acclimated the first 2 days in the simulation, we developed a system of fully communicating with each other and gathering input from each team member. Our overall goals were to do what was best for the team and ensure that everyone remained healthy so that we could have a successful climb on Mount Everest. Thank you.